If you love to build stuff, we've got some really fun building and construction hacks for you today. With this next trick, I'm hoping to save you a little bit of time on your next DIY project. Something as simple as hanging a picture frame or something as complex as hanging cabinets. And maybe I can save you from having to carry one additional tool. If you happen to be someone who has an iPad or an iPhone, if you go to the App Store and you type in Measure, you may already have this app on your device, but if you type in Measure, you'll find that there's an app in the App Store that's actually a native product to Apple. It's called Measure. And we can use this tool and turn our iPhone into a level and a tape measure. So if we open the Measure app, we'll notice that there's two settings here at the bottom. One is Measure and one is Level. What I want to show you today is the Level. This app uses the built-in gyrometer in your phone and turns it into a level, but it works in all three orientations. It works to check to see if things are flat, like here. We can also check if things are level and plumb. So let's say that you've decided to hang a new piece of wall art and you want to make sure that it's nice and level. If you set your iPhone on its edge and you work until you get the green indication, that tells you that your wall art is level. Your iPhone is actually capable of replicating this small bubble level here. Notice when I tilt this, we can get the bubble to be right in the middle, about right there. Your iPhone or iPad are capable of the same thing. So if we look here, when we have our device laying on its back, notice that the balls kind of act like a bubble. And what they do is they move around and tell us what change to make to get something to be flat. When you get there, you'll get a green indication. Maybe you've decided to build a new deck, or you're working on some hand railing. If you put your iPhone on its edge vertically, it will tell you whether or not something is plumb. And if you move it back and forth, you'll find the 0 indication, and now you know it's plumb. There's actually a sneaky trick here. Your iPhone is capable of telling you whether it's both tilting or plumb this direction at the exact same time. So if your green line is low like that, it tells you that it's not straight up and down. What you want to do is find the 0 indication and line the green line up with those two small hash marks. Now it's plumb in both directions. And now for an advanced angle. So once you have a level line, you can tap the screen once, and now you can tilt your device and it will reference your original angle and tell you the new angle. So let's say we wanted to make a 45-degree line. We could tilt our phone to there, and now we can make a new mark with our phone at 45 degrees. Okay, for this hack, you have a speed square, but it's not long enough. Maybe you have a long board or a wide board and your square isn't long enough to make a straight mark. So what do you, transfer the line? Let me show you a trick with a normal crosscut saw. You'll notice here on the handle of this saw, this little marking, it shows that this is actually 90 degrees here and this is 45. Whether you even have a speed square or not, this can be a super useful tool because of its length. So you have this really wide board and you've got your speed square, but you can't quite get to the end of the board. Maybe you try to go over here and transfer the mark, but maybe the edges aren't square. Instead, you can just grab your saw and line that up with the edge of the wood, and now you have a very long square. Beautiful. Beautiful. Or maybe you need to make a 45-degree mark, and you can do that with this also. So we're going to line the back here up, and this one's a little more tricky because it's so far from the blade, but we can make a 45-degree mark also. Beautiful. For this trick, I'm going to show you how to use a second framing square with your first square to help you speed up your first tread height. Okay, so we took a moment here and used our stair gauges to set out our stringer. Okay, so we've got our first step, second step, etc. The problem is the first step is usually a weird height, and the reason for that is you have to account for the finished floor height. See, the stringer is going to bear on the floor underneath, but then you're going to build the floor up, and so you want to account for that in this first step height. You also need to account for the tread thickness. Hopefully I didn't lose you guys on all that, but let me show you how to make this a very easy mark. So we're going to lay framing square A back in our original tread and riser. Okay, so this is our stair. And now if we take a second framing square and simply put it up against here, we can actually run this over to the edge of our board, and now it acts like a tape measure. So we can measure straight down here. Let's say our riser is 7 inches. So we need to subtract 1 inch because of the tread height, but then we need to add 3/4 of an inch because of finished floor height. So we're gonna be at 6 inches plus 3/4 of an inch. So we can make a mark here. We can transfer our line down. And then all we need to do is use our framing square to finish that. And what we'll have is the bottom of our stairs. And there you go. This is the bottom of your stringer. This actually bears on the floor, and here is your first step. This trick is to help you prevent boards from cupping. This would be really useful, for example, in stair treads or building a deck, things like that. If you look really closely at the end grain of these wide boards, you notice that they look like a rainbow. If these boards are not perfectly dry, what'll happen is as the water leaves the board, they will actually shrink along these arches here in the grain, kind of the round wood. And the result is what's called cupping. It's when a board starts to take on this kind of curved shape. The problem is that can be bad for stairs and it can be bad for decking. For one, it can hold water, and over time that will damage the board. If you look at this stair tread that's put on, the rainbow here is upside down. And the effect is that when the board tries to shrink, it's going to shrink in this direction here. It's going to try to cup into the stringer, but it can't because the stringer is here, and it will stay perfectly flat. This tread, on the other hand, the rainbow is up, and so the grain has a tendency to shrink in this direction, and the result is a board that's cupping. The way to prevent these boards from cupping is to put the rainbow upside down, or if you want to remember it a different way, rainbows are bad. For this trick, I want to show you how to build a really cool tool anytime you have to repeat a measurement or more than one measurement. This is super helpful when you're trying to lay out something to be uniform over a long distance, and it removes any potential for error. Okay, so an example would be I've got this stair stringer here, and I want to drill 3 holes here for screws to fasten it down. Okay, so I've got my speed square, and I know this is 11 inches, so maybe I try to make a mark at 3 3/4. Maybe I come over here and maybe make a mark at 3 3/4. Okay, so that now I'm in thirds, and then I could mark in the middle of these if I wanted to. Okay, fine, that looks good, right? The problem is I have to do that over here, and then over here, and then I've got to do that on 13 different stairs. This is what's called a story stick, and story sticks are something that are built for each use. So an example here is this piece of wood is cut to the exact width of this stair tread. That way, whether I reverse it this direction or the other way, it's always going to be exactly the same. Then what I did was I took the time to divide this into 4 equal parts and made a line. And now it's very easy to drill my hole and fasten my screws very evenly over my treads. I can repeat this over and over and over, 13 treads. It will be perfectly uniform. This type of tool is actually really helpful kind of if you think ahead on a project. An example would be, let's say that you're framing something up, maybe a bathroom, and you want to put tile in later or something like that. If you built a story stick of where the studs are in a room, after all the drywall and everything is on the wall, guess what? You could take your story stick, stick it on the wall, and you could tell exactly where to put the screws to fasten something down. Give the story stick a try on your next project. I think you're going to love it. The next trick is just using some really simple common math. If you're trying to build something that's square, this works whether you're trying to build a small box, maybe a cabinet, or in this case, like forms for maybe a concrete patio or a concrete walkway. So what we're going to do is the same principle that's behind this speed square here. We're going to measure out from the corner and make a mark, measure up the back, make a mark, and then what we should know is when they're the correct measurement that it's actually a square. So this method is called the 3, 4, 5 method, and when you have a triangle and the right angle of the triangle is 3 and 4, the hypotenuse should be 5. So on this side of this particular form, let's mark at the 3 foot mark here. And let's mark on the edge of the board. That's important. And then coming over here, let's mark 4 feet, and again, on the edge of the board. And if this is square, when we measure from our 4-foot mark to our 3-foot mark, we should be at 5 feet perfectly. For this trick, I'm going to show you how to use just a small piece of tape to show you how deep to drill. Let's say that you want to drill 1 inch deep on this drill bit, and you don't want to drill too shallow or too deep. Where you would use this, let's say that you wanted to drill a hole in this piece of wood. For example, this is a stair stringer. So we want to drill a hole, but we don't want to drill all the way through, but we also don't want to drill too shallow because of the length of our screws. So we maybe want to drill around 1 inch deep or so, about right there, so that our screw has good bite, but we don't make a mistake. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is take our drill bit and we're just going to make a mark at our depth. So I'm going to start at the 1 mark, that way I don't get any error from the end of the tape measure here, because that can move. And let's make a 1 inch deep mark. So that's going to take us to the 2 inch mark. So there, we've made a mark with our marker. And if we wanted to, we could rotate it a little bit more and make another mark. And now we can take a piece of tape and just put it right on our mark there and rotate the drill bit around. And now we have a very nice depth gauge. So instead of having to guess, you can just simply go until your material meets the tape here and you're at a 1 inch deep drill. So with this trick, I'm going to show you how to use your speed square so that you're drilling a nice straight hole. It's very easy to get the drill to one side or the other, or to lean it towards you or away from you. But if you use your speed square, you basically have 2 planes. You have this plane and this plane all referenced from the material. So if you simply hold your square, something like this, and begin to make a drill, you can go right down and just follow that square and you should make a perfectly straight hole. For this trick, I'm going to challenge you to look at your screws that you're typically using for projects. If you're getting splits or the wood isn't doing what you want, let me show you a trick to make sure that your screws are doing a good job. If when you're doing your woodworking or construction projects and you tend to grab a screw like this one, this is actually a decking screw. If you look really carefully, the bottom of the head actually has this kind of wedge shape to it. These types of screws tend to split wood, especially if it's dry. And if you're doing a woodworking project or a construction project and that's happening, try to find a different screw. See how the bottom of the head on this screw is flat? This is called a truss head screw, and it doesn't have a wedging or a splitting effect. It just has a really high clamping force. So this is a trick. If you're getting frustrated, look at your screws more carefully and find a better screw. So the way to use this screw, for example, on this stair tread, if we didn't want this tread to split, maybe we're pushing really hard on it, we want to make sure it's good and tight and doesn't squeak. What we would do is we would pre-drill a hole, and what it would do is hide the head of the screw below the surface, and then we could cover over it later with a dowel. But this screw will actually hold this tread tighter than this screw, the decking screw, without splitting it.